Today we're talking about FOMO and buyouts, and we're going to start with the Drowzee from SV Base. There's an article that just came out from TCG Player. We're going to dive into that specifically about this card. But if you take a look at this chart, I mean, we're up almost 500% on the Drowzee. It's become the most expensive card from SV Base. You know, just in the last 3 months. 3 months ago, this was a 13, 14, $15 card. It did shoot up, to around 38, then came back down to 30, stagnated there for a while, and now we're seeing $80 sales. And the first thing you have to start to ask yourself, well, like, I like this card. This is a cool card. I liked it. I pulled it from SV Base back upon release. It's a nice card, but is this an $80 card in your mind? Because FOMO is playing a big factor here. Not people are having a hard time getting their hands on sealed, but singles are available online just with the click of a button. There's a lot of factors. We'll break it all down. But is this an $80 card to you? You can see last sold's 80. There's some Japanese copies here. PSA 10 for almost 600. 80s, 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 high 70s, low 80s, as high as 100 recently on the Drowzee, right? Confirmed sales just in the last month, 176% growth if you want to zoom out. On the 1 year chart, 1 year ago, this was a $4 or $5 card, and now we're at 1,600% growth. If you go to the lowest listed, you're at $80 right here. So that's where we're at. And then you go, okay, well, that's just TCG Player. That's just TCG Player, right? Well, let's hop over to eBay. These are the last solds on eBay. I'm going to assume that this is a weird anomaly right here. I don't know one. We're going to ignore that one. But closer to what we're seeing, 90, 85, 99. There are a few in the 140s. 115. You got a CGC 10 for 600. This one's around 70 with shipping. 100, 90, 80. And then the first PSA 10 sale that we see. Now, the PSA 10 pricing, I can get behind a little bit more. It's extremely hard to grade, but $950 for the Drowzee in a PSA 10. So let's bring us to the article. The article is titled, this is from TCG Player Infinite. Drowzee wakes up, everybody panics. And they're talking about buyouts specifically. Now, we're going to skim through the article. You feel free to read the whole thing. But right here, this is what they're claiming. They're claiming that there were 2 buyouts of Drowzee. The writer says, I'm here to tell you that there was indeed a major buyout on Drowzee 210. At least 2 of them, actually. The twist is, the last of them occurred 5 months ago, is what TCG Player is claiming. However, we'll talk about that too in this video. They're showing on July 13th, 2024, and September 6th, 2024. They're talking about the copies per buyer, essentially, is the information that they're using. And, that is well before these big run-ups you can see. So, going off of that information, if that's the only information that you're using, then, that indicates a buyout. And then since then, we haven't seen, that per copy, per user number increase, right? And then also down here, they're talking about Pokemon Pocket, TCG Pocket, the app, becoming so popular. You can see the interest in this is Google search for just Pokemon cards. We're at a 1 year high for Pokemon cards. So they're theorizing that it's an increased interest in Pokemon cards from TCG Pocket. However, I do think that's something worth talking about that I don't think would show up when you're talking about these numbers, right? The per buyer, right? 12.4 copies per buyer back in September. We have seen there has been notable people that have come out saying, yes, I've been buying out this card. I have heard of groups of people buying out a card. Now, when you're doing groups of people buying out a card, you're not going to get these numbers, the 12.4 per buyer, because you have a lot of people, right? There is a known content creator who apparently has been open about doing that, and I don't know how much is like organized in his Discord or whatever, but they say, okay, we're going to target this card, and they all buy it. right? And I've, if you've been around, you've heard of it happening before, right? It's not like unheard of. So, what you're not going to see on this guy right here, I mean, if we look at the 1 month chart, you can see even recently in the 80s, we are seeing the most items sold, 45 right here, February 19th at $82. And if you were to look at the data, and a lot back here too, there's a big spike here. That doesn't mean that you're going to see like the article was talking about 12.4 cards per buyer. Or something like that. If you can get a large group of buyers, it's going to look a bit normal. You're going to see a spike, but the cards per buyer is going to be down, right? So then also what happens too, once these prices run up, and you see these confirmed sales, right? Your average, collector comes on here and they go, oh no, look at all of these sales. The FOMO kicks in, right? Because we're already in FOMO of you can't even get sealed product. It's really hard to go out to your Walmart and Target. Even if you time the restock, you might not get any product. Everything's just off the shelves. So FOMO's at an all-time high, right? So you got to think about that. Also, apparently targeted buyouts are at an all-time high as well. I'm not trying to, I'm not part of buyouts or coordinated buyouts, or I don't do it. I don't partake in anything like that. And there is another very interesting article that we'll talk about at the end of the video, specifically talking about the Greninja. I brought it up before. They were theorizing that the Greninja's rise in price was due to a buyout. So when you start to think about these cards, being in $80, I'm not going to buy the Drowzee at $80 personally. I just don't see the value there. Now, if you want to FOMO and chase it, then that's fine. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me for the Drowzee. Stuff like that. We'll look at some other cards too. I mean, here's some more examples. We'll talk about the Baxcalibur from Paldea Evolved. Similar thing. It's up 310%. I mean, look at how expensive this card is right now. Not that this is not a nice looking card. I do like the colors on this card. I have said that this is a nice card. It's not hard to go find nice looking art cards. This era is chock full of them. But low quantity currently available on the Baxcalibur, but it's in the $40 range. You can see there was a big spike back here, February 2nd. And then another spike into the price increase right here. So it's hard to know how much is targeted buyouts and how much is FOMO, right? Or is it just a combination of both? And then the next question you have to ask is, where are these cards going to end up? Because I do think that, that's a very important thing to talk about, and I think that's kind of what pairs into the Greninja, albeit the Greninja being a different case, right? It's a different type of card. It was already the most expensive card. We'll talk about that, like I said, more towards the end. But if you want to use that as an example, the Greninja hasn't come down. It's actually only gone up, right? Now these lesser cards like the Baxcalibur, is there enough demand on this card to continue to be at a $40 price point? That's the question you have to ask. How much is it going to drop, and when is it going to drop? Back here it was a $10, $11, $12 card, as low as 8 and 9, 310% on the year. So like I said, all that growth coming just recently, pretty much just in the past month on this card. And then you let's play the game again. Let's say, whoa, that's just TCG player. TCG players manipulated. Well, let's go over to eBay. This is what we're seeing last sold on eBay, 30 with 35 with shipping. Then you have, somebody who hasn't been keeping up with the prices, and they list a low card, $12 sale here. This looks like, although this does look like the same photo, so I don't know what's going on there. Then you have 30, 40, 30, PSA, is this at 8? Near mint 8, 35. Some weird ones high, that seems weird. 25, 27, 20. So a lot more in the 20s, but you are seeing as high as 30s and 40s on the Baxcalibur. So that would be, that kind of indicates it's a little bit below, and it's not kind of quite transitioned over fully to eBay. But those prices are You know, definitely over. They match kind of what we've seen here. Um, you know, in February, the about the 12th through the 16th through the 17th maybe, before this bigger shoot up, right? So a lot of these prices, some being high, and then you know you go back a few days, and we're more in that 20 to $30 range. So it is just more of the recent sales. So we'll have to keep an eye on the Baxcalibur, seeing where it kind of plays out, um, as far as the solds, right? But it is affecting eBay, um, to a certain extent. You have another card. This is a nice looking illustration rare, one that I talked about a long time ago on the channel. But you know, a Metagross card that I do like, and it's up 207% from $11 up to 36, right? Most recent solds in the 40s, you got as high as 60, and then kind of mid to upper 30s on the Metagross. You can see last solds, or on the 1 month chart, you know, there's a big spike here, 28 items, you know, the most by a lot. And then another one into the strength here, another 27. 62 currently listed. Like lowest listed right now is, you know, there's one at 25. And then after that, it jumps up into the 40s. So, when are these cards going to come down? And how much? I think, you know, with, like I said, being in this extreme bull market, I do think you have to be wary that, you know, these cards might not crash down. They might hold some of this value for a while. I don't know how to what extent, that they're going to hold this value, but you know, and not that some of these illustration rare cards also haven't been undervalued in the past. You know, it could be we're seeing, you know, potentially the perfect storm of a lot of these illustration rares were undervalued. You got the biggest bull market that we've possibly ever been in, and then you got FOMO and you got buyouts. So you put all four of those things together, and it's kind of a recipe for price increase. People can't get their hands on sealed. So you know we're seeing upper to mid 30s to low 40s on TCG for the Metagross. We go over to eBay, and that's, I mean, these are the last solds: 40, 48, 38, 49, 35. Before that, a little less: 28, 34, 16, 18. But still some higher sales: 58, 35, 25. You got a CGC 10, it looks like, for 120, a PSA 10 for 200. Now, the PSA 10 pricing, you know, these are tough to grade cards, a lot of these illustration rares. So I'm not really looking too deep into the PSA 10 pricing currently, right? But this is just another example. And so also, once again, if you want to talk about sales per user or whatever, I don't think that metric can really be applied too much when you have groups of people planning these buyouts. So just keep in mind that, you know, that I get where they're coming from on the article, but I feel like they're a little bit naive or out of touch with what's happening, potentially. So, you know, and it very well could be like, I don't know, is this just the first buyout? Like, was this the buyout, the targeted buyout, and then the FOMO is here, or is it two? Was it two buyouts? I you know, I don't know. We don't have that information, right? Or I don't have that information. Maybe somebody does, who's in one of these groups, or you know, a little deeper in the weeds, right? I'm just kind of like an outsider perceiving this, so keep that in mind. You know, I do think it's kind of a combination of the perfect storm. Then you have, you know, like this card. I saw this card being talked about recently, the Infernape. It's up 94% in the past month. You can see a lot of purchases right here. A lot. 90 on January 29th. And you can see a lot here too, now that the price is up. 68, right? So last solds 16, 18, 20s. Mostly 18s and 20s. Some as low as 16 recently. On the Infernape, lowest listed right now on this guy is around $20 with shipping ish. So, you know, not the biggest, the craziest gains, but you know, you see this card shoot up, you know, and then you go over to eBay. eBay's kind of matched for the most part: 20, 16, 18. This is like 20 almost with shipping, 20 with $4 shipping. You got a 9 for 20, right? So I mean, it seems like it's kind of, for the most part, eBay is maybe just a little bit behind or kind of matching, which is interesting. A lot of the times before, when the market wasn't as crazy and you'd see a buyout, you'd see the TCG price be inflated and the eBay price being like, yeah, I mean, it's not happening, right? So we're seeing it with the Infernape, to a certain extent. This is one that I had heard a little bit more about being talked about. It is a nice looking card. So that tails into we're gonna talk. So this is an old article. We're gonna talk about this article real quick. October 2nd, 2024. This is, they said, is Greninja's price the fault of one buyer? So they talk about in this article, and this, once again, this is old, information at this point. But I do think it's kind of something that should be talked about when we're going to talk about buyouts. Okay. They're talking about on one day, I think it was this right here. Most notably on June 19th, 26 copies sold. For reference, right now only 3 to 5 copies sell per day. That's a huge difference. Right, so they're talking about that right here, and you can see the big, notice something unusual. Once again, they're going to the quantity purchased per buyer was 4.67, while every other day was less than 2. So they're talking about one person buying it out at 173, and that triggered the price increase essentially. So, you're talking about this is where it is. This suggests that one person bought 19 copies of this card in a single day. So you can see that's what they're talking about. That's what the article is talking about. And if you look at the Greninja, once again, it's different than these illustration rares, but we'll pull it up. We'll pull it up on TCG Player just to see. We've talked about it recently. This card has continued to rise in price, being a $400 card now. It's up about 20% in the past 3 months. We'll look in the past month, it's up 20%. So this card, if we want to zoom out, you can see upon release, 158 upon release, it came down, came back up, and they were saying June, was it the 17th? Around this time frame, somewhere in here, right? Is when that buyout happened. And the card has only gone up since then. Albeit, you got to keep in mind that Twilight Masquerade came out before the bull market, the extreme bull market. It was a turning point for the SV era. I don't think anyone can deny that Twilight Masquerade was the turning point. The booster boxes were starting to get expensive. We had our first finally expensive chase card. But you can see, while this card has fluctuated, it hit 300 and then came back down off of 300 to 260. It's continued to just steadily rise over time. Now seeing $400. So there is another aspect to be talked about of whether it was a buyout or not in this market. A price can continue to hold or continue to grow, because I think people underestimate, the power of FOMO, the power of social media, the power of attention on these cards. Now, I don't think that you can really compare Drowzee to Greninja as far as popularity, right? I don't think that's even an argument. Or Baxcalibur, right? Baxcalibur's not that popular. Unless maybe I'm living under a rock and there's tons of Baxcalibur fans. Once again, not that these cards aren't nice. I've always championed illustration rares. I've always championed, starting from SV base, that, we're in the greatest artwork era we've ever had in Pokemon, hands down, not a question asked. Or not even a debate, really, in my mind. And I love Sword and Shield era, too. Don't get me wrong. There's some brilliant alternate arts from Sword and Shield, but I think the illustration rares from this era have been just so chef's kiss. So this is where I pose the question to you guys. Do you think that are we in the perfect storm? Is it just only buyouts and manipulation? Is it only FOMO? What do you guys think really is driving these prices? And then the other thing to talk about is, like, when will these correct? If they correct, when will they correct, and how much will they correct? I think we'll see bigger corrections on some of these really, like, these less desirable cards. Maybe the Drowzee holds up a little bit better. He is a Gen 1 Pokemon. It is a unique design. Maybe the Drowzee, maybe he ends up holding some good value. over time. You know, he could. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, this is the thing that the one thing I want to reiterate the most is nobody knows. Nobody. I don't know. The people who are doing the buyouts don't know. You never know what's going to take off. The Drowzee could become more popular. It could be a $150 card. That's possible. It could go back to $50. It could go back to 30. Nobody knows. The market is too crazy right now. Especially singles. That's why I don't really dabble a lot with singles on the investing side. I lean towards sealed. Sealed's a bit more predictable. The supply goes down over time. Price rises. But also with the Drowzee too, we're probably not going to get any SV base reprints. So less supply of Drowzee entering the market. So there's something to be said for that. But I do think it's interesting and needed to be talked about. Also, when you talk about buyouts, I know that's it's kind of in the line of scalping. It's looked negatively upon in the community as a whole, right? Especially targeted buyouts. If you're talking about a group doing targeted buyouts specifically just to run a card's price up, but that's the reality of this is the world we're in. Pokemon cards are popular. They are expensive. And at the end of the day, if they weren't worth, if there were no cards really worth anything, there would be a lot of people that wouldn't be in it. And we've talked about, this is the human nature side of, and I've talked about this, like, look, just how you view a certain set, right? When something changes, like a card goes up, say the Drowzee card, say it holds, at this price, or maybe even we'll live in Fantasyland, which could happen. Say it hits $100 and it holds. Your view of SV base is going to change just because now that Drowzee card is cool and I like it and I always liked it. And it's fine to say that you always liked it. I don't think there's anything wrong. Like, I have always liked the Drowzee card. I don't like it at $80. I don't think it's an $80 card personally, especially with the pull rates being so easy from SV base. But it just, people, they go, oh, I like that card. It's expensive now, or whatever. And that's the human nature side of things, and it just happens, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I think when you get millions of collectors all having that same mindset, I think the FOMO is strong, the FOMO is real. I tend to lean in on, we're in a perfect storm of all four of those things that we talked about, and that's what's fueling everything. It's just a combination, right? If there's no sealed product available, singles are readily available to be purchased. People are trying to make money. People are trying. Some people want to run up the Drowzee card so they can flip it and maybe they can get some cards they want. Some people just want pure profit, just kind of like scalping. There's everyone from every walk of life and every take is in the hobby, right? So anyways, a little bit of a ramble. Hopefully this was an interesting video. I know it's not like anything new, but I thought it was worth talking about. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment, though, and let me know what you guys think. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And remember, it was never a phase.